Government says that the student protests did not force it to release more funding, to get more from government and clarity in that regard and understanding of what's happening at the higher learning institutions. We're now joined via Zoom by the Deputy Minister of Higher Education, Mr. Buti Manamela, for reaction on those developments, of course, at Wits. A very good afternoon to you, Deputy Minister. Thank you for joining us here at SABC News.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me.
Firstly, I mean, as Deputy Head of the Ministry, directly in charge of higher education, what's your reaction been to students fighting like this for education, something that your Ministry has, guaranteed them, along with the ANC, of course, along with the government itself, the fact that they can get free education? What do you have to say to what's been happening on the streets of Braamfontein, sir?
Well, firstly, I'd like to indicate that, what happened yesterday, where, there was a loss of life of a young man who had quite a bright future ahead of him, is quite regrettable. And as we've indicated, extended our condolences to the family and hope that this matter is dealt with so that whoever is responsible for this, that they are brought to book. But secondly, that, government has done as much as we could within the limits of the national fiscus to ensure that we meet the commitments that we've made to provide fee-free higher education to deserving students who qualify, whose parents earn not more than 350,000, and their academic performance shows that they can have access to higher education.
Yeah.
And those are the limits within which we've committed to provide fee-free higher education.
Yeah. Deputy Minister, we heard Minister Blade Nzimande speaking, and he was talking about funding being reprioritized. And I just wonder, I mean, Deputy Minister, I'm sure you're aware that, it's almost every year where we have these sort of problems where students are being financially excluded. Why wasn't this funding prioritized from the beginning? Why did you not make the contingency plans from the start so that we would then avoid something like this? And as you say, a situation where there's a life that's been lost.
Well, I think there are two things that I must help so that we distinguish.
Yeah.
There are issues which are specific to Wits University, which the students and the student leadership have raised quite sharply, and we've encouraged both the management of Wits and the student leadership to meet and resolve those issues, and that those issues have got nothing to do with the statement that was issued today. What was announced today, which was that there will be funding for students who will be doing their undergraduates, the first year students, and that they should be calm because they've been, parents and students have been anxious as to whether will they be funded by the National Student Financial Aid Scheme or not. It's something that we've been working on since last year, engaging with the presidency and treasury to make sure that this funding is provided for, and that was the announcement that was made today in relation to all the students nationwide, and also to announce that all universities have agreed to extend their registration process, and also that they want all universities to start with their academic programs in earnest. What we will be doing, obviously, is to ensure that calm is restored at Wits, and also ensure that all parties that are party to this, the disputes at Wits, get to resolve whatever the issues that are there.
Deputy Minister, I see you separating the issues for us, and thank you very much for that. But back to my question still, and the crux of what I'm asking you. In terms of whether or not you foresaw the fact that students would indeed be protesting, regardless of what the issue at hand is, surely as a ministry, you do foresee that students could be upset or could have a reason to protest. And I'm wondering if you did not foresee that, and if you didn't foresee it, why didn't you?
Well, look, we as I said, in terms of the issues that relates to the National Student Financial Aid, which is what the Minister was announcing today, we're not anticipating any protest because we were quite confident that government will be able to deal with whatever issues that relates to the state of higher education in our country. But secondly, as I said, the protests relating to Wits are issues that relates to Wits University. And we believe that it was the responsibility of the authorities at Wits to anticipate that these kind of issues may arise. And as per the briefing that we got from the Wits management, that they've been engaging with the SRC for quite some time. And, are hoping that, that is concluded. So it's not in our business to, observe that all our plans are going to go, as expected, and therefore anticipate that there will be protests. And that's why the protest, as I'm saying today, was specifically at Wits and relation to Wits-related issues.
Yeah, and then I also want to talk about the issue of Nsfes. There's a lot being said online. I do see you are on Twitter, so I'm assuming you see some of the commentary there by some of the students. And one, some of the interesting ones that I've picked up as I look at some of the comments coming from the students is, how is our government stopping funding, or rather, why is Nsfes funding being stopped for some students at a time when obviously many parents have had problems. We've been dealing with a pandemic, many parents have lost their jobs and so forth, and I think the question really that's coming from those who are tweeting such things is how is it possible that this was allowed to kind of happen? The fact that a lot more students would indeed be in need at this time, given the fact that we've had this incredibly difficult past year. And I'm just wondering if from the side of government that was not seen, that this that there'd be more students in need and more students who should actually be able to go into varsity and do indeed have the the right scores, the right marks to be able to go into varsity, that their parents simply cannot afford to pay the fees. And I'm just wondering, especially given the kind of year that we've had dealing with the pandemic, if that was not something that was looked at by the government at large.
Look, that tweet has no basis in truth. There is no student who qualifies for National Student Financial Aid Scheme whose parents earn less than 350,000 and who passed, their grade 12 or their previous year, who will be refused funding. There is no such thing, and this is exactly, the problem wherein we try and confuse issues that I think are not related. What we want to emphasize to all those students who have applied for the National Student Financial Aid Scheme, either as continuing students or as first-year students, that as long as they qualify, particularly those who are on the SASSA grants, who automatically qualify, that all of them should, not be anxious. There has not been any funding that has been cut. We have reprioritized funding from other programs within the department, and those resources will then be reallocated towards funding all students who are deserving and who are qualifying, to study in our universities and TVET colleges.
All right. And just from the department at large, I really wonder, is there a permanent solution, looking forward? I suppose, year by year, there's different eventualities and different things that you need to analyze. But, it seems as though when there is a solution, it's always a temporary solution. You'll remember, of course, it wasn't that so long ago we had the Fees Must Fall protests, and, you are sure there was a bit of a solution there. And then now we find ourselves here at the Wits Asnamali protests. And I'm just wondering, are we not looking at long-term solutions instead of, kind of putting a Band-Aid over this, this gaping wound? Are you at a point where you're starting to kind of see where the issues are and where we can fix so that we have a long-term solution even long after you're not in office?
Yeah. Look, firstly, we believe that government, as long as the ANC is still leading in government, will continue to provide fee-free higher education based on the policy that we've adopted. And we understand that as this continues, there will be challenges. We're not oblivious to that. And as and when we are confronted with challenges, we'll obviously, try and readjust, try and look at some of those challenges. Just as, for instance, initially parents were qualifying where those were earning below 120,000 rands, and we realized that that's too low, for instance, a margin, and that's why it was increased. To cover more households. So all of that, will be happening in the course of time. But the second major challenge, which we, are aware of and are working on, which the minister is finalizing and should be making an announcement, is around, the so-called missing middle. Those, students whose parents are earning above 350,000, but below 650,000. So it's one of the things that we're looking at, because it's one of the biggest contributor to our student debt in our country, and also the fact that many of the parents within that bracket, their income levels may have dropped, or they may have been retrenched, and all of those because of the pandemic. So that's some of the things that we're looking at. But thirdly, which I think is going to be very crucial, we need to be discussing as a country the connection between what we provide for as fee-free higher education in relation to what are the priorities in terms of skills, and whether shouldn't we be considering channeling resources towards those kind of careers. What we really want to see is an expanded higher education, post-school education and training sector, particularly at the TVET colleges. We've seen a rise over the last 10 years of the TVET sector, but we believe that we have to expand that sector to the commitments as made in the National Development Plan. But all of this obviously cannot happen without taking into consideration that we have a national fiscus that's under pressure. We have to reprioritize a whole range of other things. We have to remove resources from potential expansion of infrastructure because of the challenge of getting access to more and more students in our higher education and training, in our post-school education and training system. So those are the things which, we will continuously and consistently keep within our eye and look at whatever other challenges that may arise in the future, and ensure that we act differently, we act effectively, and we ensure that, we contribute to our sustainable solutions in the post-school education and training sector.
All right, Deputy Minister, thank you for giving us your time. Much appreciated.
Thank you so much.
All right, that's Deputy Minister of Higher Education and Training, Buti Manamela. We've got